From Ovid is a tale of the old days when the gods of the Greeks would walk among us. There's a fen that stretches for miles. And if you're very brave and very young and can still leap from hillock to hillock across the fen, you'll come to an ancient ruined temple. And before that temple stand two trees, one an oak, the other a linden. They grow so close together that the branches are intertwined, almost as if they're one tree. Two men were walking across the broad plain. The broad plain was filled with farms. It was a prosperous area, sure enough. One was a middle-aged man walking heavily with a stick. Every once in a while, he would look and catch eyesight with an eagle. The other was a young, active man, and constantly talking. Look at the calves this year. Oh, they have so many calves. Look at the barley. We've got so much barley. They will do very well this. Please, I know I gave you charge of messengers, but I can see as well as you. My apologies, your lord. They walked up to a farm to see if maybe they could get some repast from their travels. And the farm, despite its obvious prosperity, turned them away. Still another farm with a pond filled with fish and ducks turned them away as well. So all the way down the valley, no one would let them in until they came to a tiny hovel on a small hill. In that hovel lived Philemon with his wife, Baucis, whose name I can barely pronounce, so my apologies if you actually know the Greek. This was a poor farm. They barely had 5 ducks waddling in the yard. Their garden grew nothing but cabbages. But they welcomed the two men into their home. Philemon went out into the yard and got a whole cabbage to serve them. They put it with the meager stew they'd been eating off for the past 6 days. Philemon reached way up into the rafters, pulled down an ancient piece of ham, carved off a very small sliver, looked at it as if wondering if he could afford such luxury, put that into the soup, and very carefully hung the ham back up in the rafters away from the rats and the flies. And they all sat down to eat a meal of boiled cabbage flavored with a very small piece of ham. And the woman opened an old wooden jug, and there was some wine in there, and she poured wine for her guests and wondered if there would be enough for the 4 of them. And they ate and they drank. And then she poured more wine, and they ate and they drank. And then she realized that though she had but a small amount of wine, that this wine was never giving out. And she was struck with terror. Philemon, we are serving gods. Run to the yard, get a duck to serve these men. And he ran out into the yard, chasing the duck around. And finally, the old man, no, be still, be still. Of all the people in this valley, you are the only ones who took us in. You are the only ones worthy. And what is it that you want? We will give you your one desire. And Philemon and Baucis looked to one another. And finally, they turned to the gods and said, the only thing we want is to be able to serve you in this place for as long as we live. At once, the entire valley was transformed. No longer beautiful farmland, but it was a shallow lake with streams running through it. And their hovel was transformed to a temple dedicated to Zeus and to Hermes, for that was whom they were serving. For years afterwards, for decades, pilgrims would come from all over the Greek lands to worship at this shrine, until one day When they'd grown quite old, they stood out in front of their temple. And Philemon took both her hands in his and said, I've loved you for a long time, and this was the thing we could do, and now I fear it's all ending. And she said, I know. Farewell, my love, farewell. And at that moment, bark covered them. Their arms became branches. And if you're a brave young man, you could hop from grassy hillock to grassy hillock across the fen. And there you'll find a ruined temple. And before that ruin, you'll see two trees, a mighty oak and a linden, grown so close together with the branches intertwined, almost as if they're one tree.